Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So the Iranian sanctions, bad idea to vote for them, but a Pyrrhic victory certainly for the U.S. Now notice on the eve of this, there was this battle of the intelligence agencies. A YouTube video done with a webcam appeared showing Shahram Amiri, an Iranian nuclear scientist that the U.S. had claimed had defected to the U.S. and revealed to the U.S. the story of the Qom nuclear enrichment plant. They came up with this back in the summer of last year. He was, I think, abducted, and then the announcement was made by Barkey in September that there was this additional nuclear enrichment plant. Shahram Amiri went on his YouTube tape, or somebody purporting to be Shahram Amiri, saying, I was kidnapped, I was drugged, I was tortured, and now I'm being held incommunicado, Tucson, Arizona. Now, all of this is perfectly plausible. We know from the best documented kidnapping case, rendition case in Milan, the Milan imam, back during the Bush years, that this is what they do. They grab you, they drug you, they torture you, and they hold you. This time, though, he's in the U.S., at least allegedly in the U.S. Now, the day after, a much more professional-looking tape with better production values showing probably the same guy, but you can't be sure, came on the radio, came on YouTube saying, I'm fine, I'm pursuing my education, there's no emergency. And I recommended, since in the first tape, the guy saying he's Amiri wants the human rights community to do something. I urge them to do something. Human Rights Watch and Company, American Civil Liberties Union, if you are listening, go into federal court. Call the guy's wife in Iran. Get her to make an affidavit that he's been kidnapped, he's being held incommunicado. Go into U.S. federal court. Get a writ of habeas corpus. This will not only show us whether Amiri is being held in Tucson, Arizona, it will also show us whether we still have habeas corpus, and we may not. So that's another reason, right, when you have such dubious, shady transactions being the basis of the U.S. case before the UN, another good reason for great nations like Russia, China, not to vote for this garbage. So we also have to remember the isolation of Ahmadinejad. Where has he been? He's been to Kabul, Istanbul, Copenhagen, Caracas, Brasilia, La Paz, Senegal, Gambia, Uganda, and China. And above all, the China card is what rankles. So you've got that going on. Notice also, though, that Turkey is cooperating with Iran, but at the same time they want to be a rival of Iran. In other words, Turkey has basically concluded we're not going to be allowed into Europe, therefore we're going to build a sphere here in the Middle East, and there we've got to compete with Iran. It shows that if you let these regional processes work, balancing mechanisms do emerge so that it's simply not the case that Iran is going to take over everything, because here's one powerful state that looks at it rather differently. So one of the effects of this also is that the supporters of Israel, the pro-Israel lobby in the U.S. Congress and so forth, had been favorable to Turkey up to now. Now they're against them because the Turks have turned against the Israelis. And now we're going to get this absurd process by which the U.S. Congress makes pronouncements on historical facts. We're going to hear about the Armenian genocide and the Turks, and I think this is just ridiculous. We don't need the U.S. Congress. We don't need Howie Berman of House International Relations to tell us what happened in the Ottoman Empire pre-World War I. This is absolutely ridiculous, and above all, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's simply going to push Turkey further out. Remember, I floated the hypothesis last week. Suppose we have another flotilla, the Israelis attack that one. Turkey invokes Article 5 of the NATO treaty, collective self-defense. The U.S. leads other countries in saying, no, we deny you collective self-defense. At that point, what's the goal of Turkey staying inside the NATO alliance? And if the Turks decide to leave or be pushed out, which is what the neocons are calling for, right? The various squawkers, right? The Hannitys and so forth are demanding that Turkey be expelled from the NATO alliance. Not a good idea, boys, from your point of view. But from another point of view, a crisis in NATO might provide an occasion for some other people to take the opportunity to head for the exit. And maybe that is overdue now, because, of course, NATO, fine as long as it was a territorial defensive alliance for Europe, but those days are long gone. This is now pure out-of-area imperialistic deployments. Now, in Iraq, we're seeing that the U.S. is having a real rough time. Iyad Alawi writes an op-ed in the Washington Post of today, Friday, June 11th, the risk of losing Iran. And Alawi's problem is that he wants to seize power in Iran. He did get more votes and seats than anybody else in the election. He does not have a majority. And the pro-Iranian Maliki government, the sectarian Shiites, as they're called now, are successfully blocking Alawi. So this is a cri de coeur. This is Alawi hoping for help from the U.S. elite, saying, you've got to help us. We want to take power. We're gonna put Iraq into this Arab secular and Sunni front against the Iranians, but you've got to help us. I've got to take power here, and it's not working. By the way, we're told that the U.S. will be down to 50,000 in Iraq by the end of the summer. In terms of Afghanistan, notice the huge spike upwards in U.S. losses in Afghanistan. 28 NATO dead in 9 days, and that is about as bad as Iraq ever got. If that goes on for a month, that would be a fairly seriously bad month in Iraq. And we're told now that the Kandahar offensive, the centerpiece of the McChrystal strategy, the Kandahar offensive is thoroughly bogged down, going nowhere. The losses escalate. There was this jirga of national reconciliation held by Karzai last week. It was attacked, right? It was shot up to some extent, and Karzai has now fired two important U.S. puppets in his government. So the U.S. is getting more and more fed up. They want to blame Karzai, of course, for their own incompetent policies. So all in all, this does not look too good for the U.S. British imperial position. Now, the one thing that the neocons have seized on is that there are these strikes going on in China, and these deserve close attention. This is not yet a nationwide strike wave, but the old mole of the mass strike, in Rosa Luxemburg's terms, may be at work in China. And the obvious thing that the Chinese government ought to do is raise wages. Yes, indeed. Create an adequate living minimum wage. Do that now. Don't wait for this to get out of hand, because then you're going to get Falun Gong coming in. You're going to get all kinds of subversive forces coming in there, people who don't have a constructive agenda. So you might as well go ahead and do that. Now, let's look at these U.S. elections that have occurred now this past Tuesday. Let's look at California, first of all. Carly Fiorina and Meg Whitman. Carly Fiorina, Republican candidate for Senate. Meg Whitman, Republican candidate for governor. The proposal is to call them the Goldman Sachs twins. These two charming ladies, these two harpies, the Goldman Sachs twins. And what kind of genocidal austerity they're going to propose for California. We'll be back in a minute.